Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. I'd like to thank Ahrefs for being the sponsor of this episode. If you're not an regular listener, Confessions is a short-form chat about SEO and not from a conventional viewpoint, as some have called it. It's more the bleeding edge, so be careful. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 27. This is Confessions of an SEO Mountain Edition because I do work remotely in the mountains during the summer just to cool it off. Last week's topic was me pondering where this fundamental shift away from the click that AI seems to be taking us and what that might look like. If that plays out, I'm pondering are we on our own for generating our traffic outside of Google? I mean, if they're not going to send us traffic, what are we going to do? If you need to catch up on that or you want to do some binging, catch up on every episode, you can find it on confessionsofanseo.com. I'll put the link to last week's show in the description. Today's episode is sponsored by Ahrefs Marketing Intelligence Platform, and they implemented a feature called Patches. Now, Patches allows you to fix issues on your site right from the Ahrefs site audit interface using JavaScript snippets without involving any developers. And eventually, they're going to offer it with Cloudflare workers. Probably know something about that if you've got your site set up on Cloudflare. The way it's going to work is you can draft an unlimited number of patches, but in order to publish, you'll need to boost this project to what they call max. And to do that, each project will have an additional cost per month. Patches is found in the site audit section, so check it out. I'll put the link in the description. So the news this past week is that Google announced a core update on the last day of June. And they're going to call it the June, even though the 3 weeks, most of it's going to be in July, they're calling it the June 2025 core update. Personally, not because of my feelings, but because of the data, I don't think it really got rolling, at least until July 1st. I do look at things a little differently than the average bear. I base my observations on the fact that, or the understanding really, that the biggest SEO testing outfit in this world is Google themselves. And if you run tests, the number one rule, and this is what I learned from my dad, in terms of tracing back where electrical wires would break, you don't start a test, or in this case, an update, that you're responsible for and introduce a new factor into that test after you start it. Now, on July 1st, the Chrome inspection tool crawlers, these are the ones that render pages from Search Console requests. So a different set of bots comes when you hit the request indexation in Search Console. I know this because I look at logs. All of these crawlers, there's 4 of them, 3 of them have Chrome. They updated all of them to the same Chrome build as the mobile Google bots, which are the first to hit new content. There's a group of bots that when you publish something new, whether you request it through Search Console or you let Google discover it on their own, those are all discovered by bots that the time you see them is when you're introducing something new. That's going to be the new mobile Google bot, Chrome version, and the 3 inspection tool crawlers that have Chrome. The thing is, on July 1st is when they all synced up to being the same Chrome build. Now, in the data, for me, that's more significant than any official announcement. I also took the opportunity to celebrate an update by launching some new tests. Specifically, some in regards to, there's a rel UGC tag. If you're not familiar with it, the rel UGC tag stands for user-generated content, and it's an HTML attribute. I'm talking HTML now. It's just a way to mark this link, to indicate it that it was a link added by a website user rather than the website owner. Now, that's a subtle distinction, but they They use it primarily to identify links within content like comments, forum posts, and reviews, which are not left typically by the site owner. They're by people who come to the site. This tag can also help search engines understand content of that link. It can influence how that information is processed, especially in some aspects of SEO. Now, ultimately, this and other attributes like no follow or sponsored link, they're really designed to control link spam. Basically, one of the most common activities in SEO, creating our backlinks to boost authority and ranking for our own content. In delving a little deeper into this, I read somewhere that a secondary benefit to using this tag might be to engender more trust in sites that do this, the ones that do identify, hey, this isn't our link, this is one that somebody left. And it's that transparency that might make it easier for Google spiders to crawl your website content, and it might mean that your website could climb up in search engine rankings. Now, I'm not a fan of might when it comes to SEO. I thought I would do the responsible thing and run a couple of tests that incorporated this type of tag on links to see what happens. And like most test ideas, it's always branches out to being more than just one test. So there's some with the tag, without the tag, and a couple of others. And I know most SEOs treat a core update like the one that we're in. They sort of treat them like these massive kind of like speed bumps on the road. And they put the brakes on and they go really slow, if they go at all. I tend to approach an update and speed up when normally people slow down. You might say it's a bit like hold my beer as I launch straight into Google's core update. Now, like most testing, 100% of the time, the challenge is keeping enough detail in the notes. I have learned, if I'm hungry or haven't had my coffee or enough sleep, that those, attributes in my life, that's killer for this kind of activity. And not because the test isn't set up correctly. It's that as I'm doing this, I find that my mind thinks so fast that my notations are a little basic. So when I go back, say, 2 days later, I have to spend more time going back over the test components to figure out, what test did I just set up? What am I measuring? How am I doing this? And that is what makes HTML testing, especially when you do multiple tests simultaneously, so challenging and yet so intriguing. Now, the one thing that caught my attention during this time is that as I measure the SERP volatility, now this is, I'll explain a little bit, but basically the mobile results SERP volatility is higher than the desktop. Why am I looking at that? Well, mobile first indexing, plus the fact that a core update has started, what it looks like is you literally have to work at it for Google not to index your content. It's almost like the crawling system opens up and it's a party, which, if you notice, the beginning of the volatility of the update didn't start, coincidentally, until the inspection tool crawlers updated. And I go back to say that because that's another reason why I think the update started later than the announcement. We know, because we can look at server logs, Google crawls new content with the newest Chrome build, mobile Googlebot. And that kind of would make sense that in response to that, the volatility would reflect more in the mobile SERPs during this time. Now, you can see this in weather volatility tools. Now, I track those in my crawl or no crawl data and sometimes report on things that I notice that are different than they normally are during a non-update time. It's more common lately, meaning the early spring, that the mobile results are tracking a little more volatility than desktop. So other than just interesting to know, what does this mean for you, right? If I had content in the pipeline and you thought the update was a bad time to publish it, I'd actually say, based on this information, I'd advise you not to wait. Launch new content now. Get it in the mix. Strike while the iron is hot. When I see during every update, there's a question that everyone poses, like, well, what should I do during this update? Well, it's pretty wise not to make edits just because you saw a page drop more than 2 spots. Remember, 1 or 2 spots up or down, that's kind of normal. But if you saw it go more, a lot of people, it's really hard to sit on their hands. If you've heard the term zero-sum game, it basically means in SEO, for someone to go up, it means that someone else had to go down. And that's exactly where we are. And volatility is just a measurement of that movement. It's not punishment or penalty. We couldn't possibly know that at this stage, right? It's a temporary case. Volatility, or I should say Monday, it was lower than normal in the desktop, higher in the high range on the mobile. I kind of think that what may be happening is core updates are sort of recrawling all existing content actively, taking in more content that they're confident, what the topic is on them. And then once all gathered together, then that's when it's going to be applying and reapplying any rules that they have that they've adjusted slightly. Then once they do that, then they'll flow it out. So there's phases within a core update. So there's a crawling phase, and then there tends to be a sort of, and they do it in probably like crawl in batches, and then they start processing in batches. It starts flowing out again, whatever they processed, they held it back, and then they push it out in batches. So we sort of see these spikes of volatility happen closer to the end of the time period that's projected. Like it's projected to be 3 weeks, probably something closer to, end of July. That's something to note. During an update, we still have indexed page reports in Search Console. I got to thinking about this, and I said a note to myself, downloading those reports as they happen and export them to Google Sheets, because these updates occur approximately every 3 days. The most recent one was on the 4th day. On the indexed pages report, you can export that data into a spreadsheet. And then I'm going to, at the end of this update, compare all these lists. No, I'm not going to do it manually because I've learned. You can run them through Claude or ChatGPT or even Google LLM. Ask them to compare, find out what pages, let's say, started out being in the index and maybe got knocked out of it at the end, if any. You could find that none of them are. You could find that you had more pages now than you've ever had before. It's one thing to have a feeling. It's another thing to have the actual data so you can see it. Not all pages get tossed out because of their on page. This is new, people. Take notes. There's this terrific analysis that was done in the data. It seemed to show that there was a 130-day rule in Search Console, that if a page has gone beyond 130 days, so if it went to 131 from the last time that Googlebot crawled it, that page will be removed from the index. Google will literally say in the message, we don't know this URL. This URL we've never seen before, which is, of course, we know not true, but maybe in their data they hit delete. So Google has an indexation life cycle. It's a really fun diagnostic to run. The way it was done was using Screaming Frog and the login to your Search Console for the site so you can connect in the Search Console API. Now, this was brought to light by Alex Rilko. It's on his site. It's AlecSEO.com, and you spell Alec, A-L-E-K. I'll put the link in the description. And it's pretty much a straightforward setup. much easier to fix, since it doesn't seem to be based on any on-page, simply a time-based assessment. And if you want to fix this, start submitting manually. And if you have more than you kind of want to manage, because, there's a limit in Search Console of somewhere between 10 to 12. Some days you get a little more, but on average, it's like 10 requests per day. That's your limit. That's your quota. And they will tell you when they're not going to do it anymore. And I know people say, well, keep going, ignore it because it's still crawling. Look at the server logs, is not. But anyway, if you have more than, let's say 10, Indexilla is a viable option to get that crawling restarted again, especially if those pages were previously ranking and showing as index, pulling up impressions. The 130 days was curious to me. Was the number of days, maybe the number of days between updates. I calculated the number of days between core updates to see if there was any connection between the two. Was there any movement, any correlation? And on average in 2024, it was 94 days between core updates. And so far in 2025, it's 109. Maybe 130 was chosen because it's a safe amount of time. Kind of like if your page hasn't had any visitors or, because Google will crawl pages that get visited. If your page wasn't crawled during an update, then it may not deserve to stay in the index. Google, it's always your deficits that cause your problems. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener. If you have any questions about today's topics, you can reach out and text your question to confessions at 512-222-3132. Thank you again to Ahrefs for being the sponsor of this episode. Check out the link in the description and check out Patches, which is going to help you make changes to your site using JavaScript snippets. If you need to reach out to me, I am on Facebook or LinkedIn. If you need Indexilla, you can find it at indexilla.io. And if you want to get involved in supporting my testing and research on indexation, crawl or no crawl continues. It'll soon hit complete year 4. As a sustaining member at $18 a month, you'll receive status reports to answer the question, is it me or is indexing off today? Thanks for listening. And until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.